use cases of Web3 through DePIN.
Hello everyone, Daniel from DePIN Hub here. Today we're interviewing Coco Tang, or Cokes, General Manager at Nova Labs, the creators of Helium and now focus on Helium Mobile. Nova Labs is transforming mobile connectivity with its decentralized wireless network, combining blockchain technology, its traditional telecom infrastructure, and offering the decentralized mobile service, which is Helium Mobile. Now I'm excited to dive into the conversation with you, Cokes. Thanks so much for joining the podcast today. We actually know each other for quite some time, since the time of Helium IoT back in 2020, 2021. It's been very nice to actually follow the journey of Helium and to become like Helium Inc., Nova Labs, and everything that you guys been building is quite impressive. So thanks so much for joining the podcast. It's actually a pleasure to have you here today. And yeah, can you start by talking about yourself, your beginnings with Helium, the transition between Helium Inc. to Nova Labs, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on the podcast, Daniel. We do go way back in the IoT days, so it's great to speak with you again and catch up with your audience. So as Daniel said, I'm Coco Tang. I've been with Nova Labs / Helium for over 8 years now. When I originally joined, we were trying to solve the connectivity problem in the IoT space, and trying to understand and trying to find that product market fit. Back then, we were putting together sensor solutions for different use cases like temperature sensing, pressure monitoring. And one of the things that we learned from that part of our company's life is that, we saw the most pushback when trying to install this gateway where IT departments and facilities really had a big problem with in order for these sensors to connect. And the sort of search to kind of work around that particular problem, trying to find a solution for it, led us down the path of, what if we incentivize other people to create a network so that the network is already there for these companies, hospitals to just install their hospital sensors without needing to, get approvals from facilities or IT departments. And back then, that's when kind of Bitcoin and blockchains really started to have a resurgence in popularity. And yeah, back then, we didn't really have any comparable blockchain solutions in mind to kind of work with the problem set that we had. So we created our own L1. And so that was kind of Helium's beginnings with the IoT world. And transitioning from Helium to Nova Labs kind of came about as our network grew so much. It felt like we needed to be able to take a step back and really celebrate the decentralized nature of our network. And so we decided to rename ourselves to Nova Labs so that we gave the Helium Foundation, the Helium Network, the ability for them to stand on their own. And so even though the team mostly stayed the same, we kind of put on a different hat as we approach problem solving and working with the community. So internally, didn't really change much. Externally, I would also say didn't really change much because we were still, very collaborative in all the ways that we could have been when we were under Helium.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I have to be very grateful for Helium for everything that I've been doing for the past 4 years, right? Like me and Max, my co-founder, we basically stayed 24/7 working with Helium alongside you guys, building Hotspotty. And then I was managing the layer 1 for the Helium Foundation for a while. I remember once like fixing bugs while I was in a concert with my terminal from my phone. There was like some crazy stories back then, right? It was like, I think it was an interesting journey to see also Helium, which was actually Helium Foundation was called DY, Decentralized Wireless, right? And that became Helium Foundation. And then you have Helium Inc. became Nova Labs. How do you differentiate the two companies right now? Because I know like Nova Labs is more for-profit, Helium Foundation is more like an NGO kind of thing.
Yeah, so Helium Foundation is nonprofit. It really focuses on growing the network as a whole and as a stand. So Helium Foundation is super supportive of Nova Labs and how we want to expand the mobile network for that particular sub-DAO. And Helium Foundation is also very instrumental in providing grants to develop additional projects and use cases on the IoT side as well. And so that's sort of their main governance goal. They also help, push through various helium improvement proposals. We sort of create stewardship for where the network direction should go in the future. And so they're in charge of that. Whereas Nova Labs, as you said, is for profit, but really continues to work in concert with the overall goals of the network. So working very closely with Foundation to make this happen. I think the success of one equals the success of the other. So we're all fairly aligned in that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say Nova Labs is mostly focused on the Helium Mobile right now, right? Because I think that's I would say the biggest paradigm shift that we are having right now. How many users do you guys have right now? Like 100, over 100,000?
So I think we've got over 120,000 signups since we launched, which is fantastic. And we also have, tens of thousands of hotspots out there, growing every day. So that's really important for us to continuing foster this like demand and supply at the same time. Because as we saw in the IoT days, where we had a ton of supply, right, global hotspots everywhere, almost a million. But the demand, probably based on how we had structured the tokenomics, the demand was there. We saw like millions of messages and packets sent a day, but in the finite quantity of how much, like the size of the message, the point was missed. And so we kind of recognize that, the upstart costs of bringing a sensor onto the IoT side, not only is it kind of a really big hurdle to overcome, it was also hard. You had to be like technical. You need to have funding, a project in mind, a solution that you're trying to solve for. And so with the mobile side, we're like, well, we have the demand side figured out. It's every single one of us. We all have a cell phone. We all need a data plan. We all need access to get online. And so now we're like, let's do it. Demand and supply at the same time. See what happens.
I agree with you. The IT solution is a very important one. It's really nice, but on the demand side, is also need to be technical, right? And I think it's easier to deploy a Helium hotspot than actually build a solution that's using that network, because then you need to sensors. You need to make like a business case basically, and where to use like the Helium Mobile, you just need your phone, and everybody just uses the phone every day anyway.
Exactly. It's a shift from like a B2B business to business play in the IoT landscape versus B2C business to consumer on the mobile side.
Yeah, one thing that I've seen that you can notice a lot on the Helium and the Nova Labs is like how you guys are always learning, reiterating, and changing, right? For example, back in I think it was 2022, acquiring Freedom Fi, getting in that hat of like, okay, you have like bring Boris in, bringing their team, and then starting with the CBRS, and now shifting 100% into like the Wi-Fi. What are the advantages of having the Wi-Fi over CBRS, for example?
Maybe let's go back to kind of explaining what the CBRS technology solves, and then we can kind of like delve into like why we believe that Wi-Fi is a better offering and a better solution for the problem set at hand. CBRS is a radio technology that's based on the citizens band, and it's an overall spectrum that is free for us to use. So we hear all the time about Dish and various other big carriers owning parts of the spectrum, and that's because they bid on it with the, I think is the FCC. I don't know which three-letter agency it is, but they have to pay for access to that spectrum. And when you pay for access to that spectrum, it allows you and your carrier service to send and receive data on that spectrum. And spectrum always has some finite amount of availability, right? If you've got a lot of users sending a lot of data on that particular spectrum, it can get congested, things slow down. And so that's why we have this sort of like spectrum war going in that carrier space. CBRS operates on the citizens band, so it's sort of for everybody to use. The CBRS band is also what a lot of military bases use. And so, I think in the community, we would say like Sometimes your CBRS availability may be degraded because there's some like military use. And so they deprioritize everybody else and they reprioritize for their own purposes. With CBRS, because it is very different than the band that other carriers use, it required a second SIM. And only recently had phones been able to support more than 2 SIMs, at least in the United States. I know overseas in Asia, it's a very different story. And the SIMs, the 2 of them in the phone at the same time, it needed to be smart enough to be able to switch between one SIM and the other. And when we launched the CBRS side in conjunction with Freedom Fi, we found that the switches between the 2 networks were, I would say, pretty subpar. You would get like almost 10 minutes of no connectivity at all because the phones were not smart enough to switch. And that is a solved problem with cellular and Wi-Fi. They're really good about saving batteries when you do it, remembering which was the preferred network. So you almost see no drop packets switching between cellular and Wi-Fi, but you see a lot of, terrible handling from SIM to SIM. Not only that, with CBRS, it almost seemed like we were using the technology too soon. Not all phones supported this particular band. It was band 48. And it was also kind of clunky to work with. It had really great range, and I wish the usability and the user experience of using that network was better, but it didn't seem possible for us to continue on the path of CBRS given where we are. And so the shift to Wi-Fi really is a story of usability and cost and approachability of creating, and deploying little mini cell networks, cell towers in your home or business. Like I said earlier, the switch between cellular and Wi-Fi is solved. Apple and Android have both figured that out years ago. And so switching from, somewhere far when you're out in the middle of nowhere, you go back in the city where there's Helium coverage, it is a seamless transition. Installing the Wi-Fi certificate is a single click, right? The user experience there is fantastic. You don't have to copy and paste a bunch of different codes to install a second SIM card. It's also just better for the average consumer, right? Because it's very presumptuous of us to take up 2 SIM slots. What if you had a work SIM and a personal SIM on your phone? You don't have room for a third SIM. And so it's sort of giving us the opportunity to grow even further by kind of switching from one technology to the other. Also, the Wi-Fi hotspots are much more affordable. We believe that the accessibility of the cost will mean greater adoption. And also the Wi-Fi hotspots is just simpler to onboard. It's less technical to deal with than the CBRS. So that's kind of like a really long story of why we have, put forth the proposal to sunset CBRS and kind of move forward with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, no, I do think that Wi-Fi is the way to go. Exactly. For quite some time, I think I remember talking to Abai, and you guys already testing, switching to using Wi-Fi back then. And the CBRS is definitely something that's very costly, right? What's going to happen to everyone that already, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars buying CBRS and deploying them? I saw something from Boris saying that maybe Nova Labs is going to try to compensate the shifting to Wi-Fi or something like that.
Yeah, I believe the proposal there is to kind of create a trade-in program where if you had a CBRS, you would be traded some equivalent of like multiple Wi-Fi hotspots, indoor or outdoor, depending on what you already had. And so that's to sort of extend an olive branch to our existing deployers. Like, we thank you for doing all of this great work. Unfortunately, CBRS is a technology that we don't believe has a future for the network at this time. And so, here's an alternative. You guys have been with us for so long, so we just want to kind of extend our gratitude and say, like, please stay with us. It's been a great journey so far.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's no way or no reason to keep on with the bad technology just for the sake of that the history. You guys got to move forward, which we've been doing actually. Like for the last few years, always like learning, iterating, and actually like paddle to the metal into building this network and then making things happen. Also, the Wi-Fi is a band is a frequency that's open everywhere, right? Like I think that would make it much easier to go to other countries, which is a good question that I have now.
I think the idea of like borderless connectivity is very interesting to me. Yes, you may have congestion on certain channels, but you can always switch to a different channel on that Wi-Fi, 5 gigahertz or 2.4. We've got a lot of technology coming through that is focused on expanding the feasibility and usability of Wi-Fi for like the next 10 to 20 years. So we see a lot of future in that. And like you were mentioning, like you can start creating a Helium network and in Mexico, and you go from US to Mexico without needing to, buy a travel sim, pay for international roaming. It would just work. And that's kind of the beauty of a decentralized network where there's no one particular centralized entity that controls everything.
Yeah, the magic. I can't wait for that. How has it been the deployment over Mexico? How like has it going well? It's smooth. It's a lot of like trouble. How do you say?
Yeah, I think going into a new market kind of involves a re-understanding of the economics, right? Because each country has different leverages that makes the most sense for them. But overall, I would say it's been going really well. I can't speak for Mario since he kind of owns that particular part of the network. But from what I hear, it's been going well. Yeah.
And when do we expect that to expand through Europe? Because like you guys using Telefonica, I believe also it's Spanish company, so I could come to Europe anytime soon, no?
Things are always in flux. We're always open to having discussions. And I still think we've got a lot of work ahead of us in the United States. So we want to continue kind of pulling on that thread in the US while exploring Mexico. But things take a long time to come to fruition. By the time, our community hears about it, it's probably been like years in the making. So we always don't want to count our eggs before they hatch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess everybody here is just like hoping and like being very excited, waiting for that moment.
Yeah, our international community has been sort of just waiting for ways to participate in growing the network. And yeah, we want to be able to offer them something, very soon.
Yeah, let's hope for that. Changing subject a little bit, can you talk about how does the tokenomics of Helium work more or less now with the IoT, then the mobile, and then going back from like the multi-sub networks to one network?
I mean, the original tokenomics of HNT, which was the Helium Network token, and data credits, was fairly simple. It was sort of like this Burnham mint equilibrium, wherein the more data the network processes, the more data credit is burned, because data credit is pegged to the byte. I don't remember what the conversion is, but it's some amount of cents with a bunch of trailing zeros to one byte of data. And the more you consume, the more the equivalent amount of HNT must be destroyed. So there's also some conversion between HNT and data credits depending on the price of HNT at the time. And so the overall gist is that the more data you use, the less HNT would be available in the supply. And so if you think about the supply and demand curve, as supply goes down, demand should kind of go up with that. And that's sort of the premise of the HNT and data credits mechanism. With the introduction of HIP-51, which is the two sub-DAOs of IoT and mobile, it's fairly complicated, but generally mobile, which is a subtoken, and IoT another subtoken, they have more HNT allocated to their particular treasury, the more data is consumed on that sub-network. So mobile obviously consumes more data than IoT, but there's sort of a value that kind of adjusts and takes into account the low data usage of IoT to sort of like even it out. And then both of them use data credits, and they both burn IoT along with it. So the overall mechanism is very much still the same. And that's generally the tokenomics of that.
Probably, I don't know if you are the right person to ask this question as well. What was the process then to actually realize that maybe that wasn't the best solution and think about going back to the just having one token, which is the agent T? I think it started as a HIP 666. Now it's a HIP 138. Yeah.
I think it goes along with, and this is just my opinion, it goes along with the fact that the original Helium Network, back when we were our own L1, succeeded because the tokenomics was simple, right? Proof of coverage was simple. The token itself was simple. It was easy, and sort of the user experience was simple. It was easy to join the network, be a part of the community, and understand what happens on the other side, what value you're bringing, and what you needed to do to create better value for the network. And the amount of HNT that you would receive is a reflection of how well you are providing value to the network. With HIP 51, I mean, that was launched, a couple years ago, and even still, been a few years, it's still hard to grasp the underlying tokenomics of it. And if it's difficult, even internally in the community, for them to understand how it all works together, it is really impossible for any newcomers that is interested in this new decentralized physical infrastructure network space to understand what is going on, because at first glance they'd be like, this is too complicated, I'm going to leave. It's not worth it for me to get. And so I think taking a full understanding of what this landscape is telling us, it really told us it's better. There are some good parts of the SIPDO network that is going to be kept, but the overall simplification of it all really is very important. A lot of people, even in interviews and just conversations with partners, they still think that HNT is the main token. There's no sub-token. And if that is the overall belief, then we are now spending twice the energy, burning twice the calories to sort of recorrect, when we can just call a spade and simplify. I think the simpler things are, the better it is for mass adoption.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this, to be honest. I know it's going to be a lot of work for a lot of people, right? To actually recode change a lot of things, but I think overall it's going to be the right way forward. It makes things simple. I think talking to a lot of people don't understand, the IoT. They just know that the device make IoT or mobile token. They don't understand the relation. Then they just magically show up in your wallet, and that's what it is,
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I ask a lot of projects when I interview to the podcast as well is okay, I understand, the data credits burning for Agent-T, but what relation there is into Nova Labs subscription plans into the tokenomics and Age18 tokens, right? Because one thing is data credits being used and then that burning the tokens. Does Nova Labs actually use any of the revenue generated from the subscription into buying tokens and try to help the tokenomics in any way?
So to answer the last part of your question, no, we don't do any of that. How the business takes revenue from subscribers is sort of, I would say, almost tangential to what we're trying to do. And it's complicated. So for us, the larger the Helium network is, either with Helium Mobile hotspots or partners where we convert existing routers and gateways already deployed in the wild into what we like to call brownfield hotspots. But they are basically earning for data transfer. The more we have of these types of hotspots and networks, the better the overall economics is for the business itself. And we capture, not only is the network growth important, the network placement is also very front of mind for us, because we want to be able to capture that data usage, what we call offload, to where the person is. So if you've got a network that's deployed across farmland and nobody is ever going to approach that farmland, it's not really useful for us, nor for other people, nor for the deployer of that network on the farm, unless he's using it, they're using it for their own purpose. And so that's why we focus so hard on making Planner a very kind of like full-scaled approach at solving the question, where do I need to deploy? And to answer that question, we like take into different parameters, like from discovery mapping, where our subscribers are, from footfall, where we think people should be going based on a particular data set, and kind of where carriers decide that they need offload capabilities. So like they want us to fill in the gaps for them or to enhance coverage for them in a particular area. And so I think the more usage we see on the network, either through hotspots or brownfields, the better it is tokenomics wise for the network as a whole. And because this is decentralized, like we really do want to encourage that build out, because and encourage, subscribers to sign up and join us, because it is about creating value as a community, either as a subscriber or as sort of a hotspot deployer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what are your main challenges right now? And how do you see Nova Labs and the Helium Mobile Network growing in the next year, next 5 years?
We touched a little bit on the main challenges earlier, right? So definitely the HIP 138, going back to a single token, like looking at other projects in this space, either DePIN or otherwise, and then just the overall success of projects really comes down to how simple it is for people to join and participate and to understand what the value that the network is trying to bring. And we definitely learned a lot from that. And HIP 138 is sort of our first step at trying to solve that particular challenge of it's too complicated to understand, and the barrier of entry is very high.
And so what are your KPIs or goals for the next, like, say, 5 years from now?
I think for the next 5 years, definitely have, really incredible network coverage to where subscribers need it the most. 5 years also could mean us expanding to another country to really see that borderless connectivity come to life. I'd love to be able to, and maybe it's too optimistic for 5 years, but to really disrupt the economics of the overall telco space, right? To have the ability of deploying these people-owned networks and kind of spinning the cost structure of operating this type of business on its head.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. And if you had something to tell the community, what would you tell them?
That we so appreciate their incredible support, to the new ones joining the community. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here. Come meet us at the various events that we host. We just had one in Seattle where we met a whole bunch of people. We also had one in San Francisco prior to that where we met up with like original IoT deployers from 2019. So to those that have been with us since the beginning, like you guys are the backbone of our community. We want to thank you for your support. And we wouldn't be where we are without you guys. And we certainly wish to create a bigger community moving forward. So, and we're all very approachable. So if you do see us at any events, drop by and say hi. May give you a sticker.
Well, thanks so much for joining, Coco. It's been excited to talk to you and hear everything that you guys are building. Hope to get you back on the podcast maybe in a year now and see how was the migration for the single token, how things are progressing, and how everything going. For everyone that's listening, make sure to check deepinhub.io, subscribe to the newsletter, and follow us anywhere on YouTube, on Spotify, and iPhone, iPad, anywhere we have the connectivity as well, powered by Helium Mobile. And yeah, thanks so much and have a great week and see you in the next episode.
Great chatting with you, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye bye.